Hello everyone, welcome to our Let's Play series of Disco Elysium. This is Colonel RPG as usual, and I'm very happy that you're just to join me today as we go around a bunch. Mostly that's what we're doing right now. And also maybe taking care of some checks that we still have not succeeded at. Let me look at the map over here. Yeah, I say map, I mean things like the pile of clothes over there that now I can complete. I'm not really sure where it is. We do need to go up north, so we are going up north. Last episode, I spent all of my skill points to get a storyline or storytelling. I got all my composure up there, which is a bit of an ask, but ooh, the game is shaking. Let's see if I can look at this wall a little bit more, because our conceptualization, it's still an impossible check. I mean, I can try it again. I probably should try it again. So, our current... no, that's not how it works. Have you noticed how my authority is -5? It's total authority, 0. No authority here. Sounds good. Conceptualization is what I need. I have my conceptualization shirt. Why is it? Let's see. Summer plans. A classic white summer jacket. Sounds good to me. We have a +1 in here. Yes, we do. That's pretty good. We're not... Ooh. Nice. That white satin shirt is rubbish because the other shirt. Well, no, wait. This is not for the jacket. This is for the other one. Okay, it's not rubbish at all. Why are we? Oh, because a real statement to wear because it's a white satin shirt. I actually don't know what satin is. I assume I know what it is. I assume I know, but I might not. So does that work like that? If you think you know, but you don't know if you know? It happens to me a lot. Putting things like this, putting things into this context, I should say. You know, I don't know if I know, so I probably know, but I don't know. So our conceptualization right now is why does art inspire you so much? Does it? Yeah, it does, yes, but what is art? Excellent question. Art is a diverse range of visual, literary, auditory, and performative creativity. It's an expression of imagination and technical skill. Additionally, it's history, criticism, and pure enjoyment. Visual creativity. That, in and of itself, is like everything else... Literary, specifically literary and auditory, those are specific. Like, you could consider this to be visual. Well, I mean, not auditory, mind you, but literary to be visual, but it isn't, right? We know, like, the words are in our heads. The text itself, the visual, mixing up. If you're gonna say that a book is as well visual art, then you're gonna have to have the book be part of the, like, maybe not necessarily have pictures, but sort of the disposition of the text and maybe the texture of the book and all that sort of stuff to be art. It does happen. But it's not very common. But for that part of there, that just encompasses most of the art right there, because it goes for sculpture, it goes for photography, it goes for cinema, just a bunch of other things. But yeah, it's kind of I was thinking if there was going to be something left out, but this is a pretty thorough explanation of art. It is a difficult question to answer, but as answers go, this is probably one of the best. I mean, it's more of a question of how many limitations you impose on this particular definition, because this definition is a little bit open-ended, or as it were, so you can just fit a bunch of things in here, and some people will some people believe that there are limitations to this, to the definition of art, that some stuff that would fit this particular definition is not art. Because, like, for example, enjoyment, if you're, I don't know, I'm trying to think of an example of enjoyment that people wouldn't consider art, but it still fits this notion of creativity. Like, for example, if you enjoy kneading bread, for example, or kneading dough for making bread, it is still an expression of your enjoyment. The bread itself is an expression of your enjoyment. It's definitely visual. There's definitely creativity in it because you're creating something. So it's always an expression of creativity, not just on from a because it's literally what the word means, but also because creativity. If you're going to restrict creativity to something that is unique or something that you haven't seen before, then a lot of art isn't art immediately because well because a lot of artists make things that they have seen before. You know it's tricky. Creativity literally has to mean just creating something, even if it is something that you have already seen before, something that you have already done before. The mere option that you take of creating that is part of your creativity. Uh, if you do 1,000 letter A's on a wall, the last letter A is just as creative as the first letter A because it's a different thing. It's not. Oh, you just did a bunch of letter A's. No, you did 1,000 of them. Creativity is creation. So what I'm saying is maybe enjoying kneading dough for bread isn't an art in some people's minds, but under this definition, it is. And honestly, I wouldn't consider it that it would be art in more of a traditional. I say traditional, but I mean more archaic sense of what the word art means. Because art means ars, or comes from the word ars in Latin, which is more akin to craftsmanship rather than necessarily artistic expression. But the joining of the two, I think, is where the best definition is really. Under, I think it's the. Is it humanism? No. Is it human? It isn't humanism. It's later. It's definitely not humanism. Enlightenment? Is it enlightenment? I think starting with the Enlightenment era, we started attributing certain limitations. It's when, at least Europe, not elsewhere in the world, because all the definition that I'm talking about here of art is very European centric. But in Europe, at least, the definition of art changed relatively drastically starting with the Enlightenment era, where it just became more of a it became more focused on the communication of ideas rather than necessarily the expression of your creative or rather of your craftsmanship, as it were. Anyway, but not to the exclusion of craftsmanship naturally, but still, because the whole thing, art for the art's sake and all that, it comes from there, even though it is very limiting and also naive, because that's not how it works. But anyway, in short, art is the highest form of human communication. I said the word communication. Representation, narrative, emotion, and agency intertwined. This is a lovely take on it. Conceptualization. I'm glad I'm wearing my shirt. Oh, look at me! I look smart, sort of. Would I fit into the art world? I mean, just a question. Conceptualization says, have you looked in the mirror lately? To be honest, you have the exact features of the modern artist, with that wild hair and those clothes. Perhaps you should try to write poetry someday and critique architecture. I think this I'm not sure what stereotypes we're drawing here, but what I'm saying might not apply to the text here. The perfect, what was you have the exact features of the modern artist. There's definitely some stereotypes here, because the modern artist, I think, might be related to the artist of modern art, and modern art is, I believe, it is the what really started with the Enlightenment era. Dadaism is one of the first and most famous movements. Like 19th century, somewhere around there. I think it might be later than the Enlightenment. It is. I don't know the terms. I'm sorry. It isn't the Enlightenment. The Enlightenment is before Humanism even. Yeah, I don't know the name of the, because we have all categories and stuff of what happened at each century and whatnot, and they have names, and I don't know the names. I'm sorry. Still, the modern art is probably the the pinnacle, as far as I understand it, obviously, the pinnacle of that thing that I was saying, art for art's sake, rather than having any function, than having any necessarily fitting expectations and all that sort of stuff. So that's where Dadaism really served to sort of distance the whole artistic expression from the traditional stereotypes and all that sort of stuff. But it does also limit a lot of stuff, because there's a lot of modern art, not as in, capital M, capital A modern art, but rather art that is modern and contemporary. Contemporary is probably the word, because, well, modern doesn't apply to. We think of it as that because that's what the word means. It applies to what we live through today, but it isn't. That's not what it means. At least not in an historical sense, and history of art here is what I'm referring to. So contemporary art, but not just contemporary art. All art has been historically seen through the lens of an elite. And while there is a lot of new ideas and new perspectives to be gained from capital M, capital A modern art, to classify it as what we make today is very, very limiting. Because if you think about what art we make today, if you look at it from an elitistic perspective, whatever, elitist, that's the one. If you look at it from that point of view, you're gonna be thinking, or if you have that stereotype, which it's not a correct stereotype, because it's, we have a lot of modern art that, or lowercase ma, modern art that isn't uppercase, and modern art. But if you look at it from that perspective, you're gonna be ignoring all stuff like pop culture related art, like, for example, pop music, and commercial, blockbuster movies and stuff like that, because that is art as well, and is definitely contemporary, and it's definitely detached from anything. Well, it's not, maybe not all the time, but for the most of the time, and most artists, it's definitely detached from the notion of art for art's sake, because there's a lot of consumer oriented philosophy when you try to make art like that. So that's antithetical to that, but it also, that's the thing, but that makes people say, oh, that's not art, because you're making it for a public, and you're making it, but you're limiting yourself as an artist. And while that's true, that you're limiting yourself as an artist when you're trying to make something that appeals to others, or that sells, or whatever, it doesn't mean that it's not art. It's just you can consider it not art if you want. I mean, sure, even you as an artist can consider it not art, but it doesn't mean that it isn't, because the definition is so it can be so vague and so enormous like this one, but it also can be very restrictive. The thing is, when you start making it restrictive, you're ignoring things like I don't know, like folklore music. For folk music, I say folklore music because it's not how you say it in English, but it is how you say it in Portuguese. Interestingly enough, we've borrowed the word folklore to mean folk music. But folk music, for example, being a very, very important, historically super important form of artistic expression, folk music, changing drastically depending on where you live, is very derivative. It is super. It's basically the epitome of pop music in a way. It's just very localized, obviously, pop music. And rooted down to the past rather than maybe the future, where pop music has a different attitude towards creativity in that regard, and just where you can go into certain new areas, whereas folklore is just sort of working with the tools that you have already. But it's still very derivative. And to make folk experimentation, you're gonna create genres in and of itself. Like folk metal, for example, it's not folk music, right? It's metal, because it's fundamentally of a different genre than folk music. And even in folk metal, you say folk metal, you're talking about specifically Nordic folk metal, because that's Northern Europe folk metal. Although I suppose you could try to mix it with other types of folk music, and still would be folk metal. It's just not necessarily what you're used to listening if you listen to things like Fintroll or whatever, like stuff like that. That I can't name right now more bands, because I don't listen too much of it. All I'm saying is that if you're limiting, you're going to be raising things like more art of the people, and art of the people is very important from an historical perspective. Very, very important from a sociological perspective. Very, very important. And if you're just erasing their communication as irrelevant, it's just to come across as a jerk, really. So it's kind of tricky. I didn't expect to start talking about art in my very limited understanding of what it is. I had some classes in history of art in university, and my family is a family of artists, both high brow and low brow artists. So, and I'm an artist myself, even though, amateur. We're like most people are amateur artists. And you can even consider this Let's Play to be a form of art. It is certainly a form of communication. And I say this Let's Play, but I, of course, make many other Let's Plays. But it is certainly a form of communication, but it does... If you start going that way, it is that's an interesting question. One that I have thought about before. If this is a form of artistic expression, like is a podcaster, which is basically what I am, an artist? Or the question maybe rephrased: can a podcaster be an artist? And I think the answer is yes, absolutely. But just because you make a podcast doesn't mean you're an artist, or does it? I mean, that's the thing. Maybe it's about authorial intent, or maybe it isn't. I guess it depends on who you are as well. The art is so phenomenal, like that it literally, like. Imagine you're like this very episode that you're watching right now. You've watched 100-something episodes, or maybe you haven't. You skipped ahead, but maybe you've watched 100-something episodes of this Let's Play, and you've watched many other Let's Plays. You're accustomed to the medium. You're accustomed to me. You know my ideas more or less, and maybe you even play the game. Maybe that's just a thing. And while the game itself is art, I'm talking about specifically this Let's Play. So your attitude towards me right now that I'm talking is so shaped by by your previous experience that for you to consider this to be art, it would be a big ask. Either you're like sure it is, or just trying to be really like pulling it, buffing the art, shining it out, and just like trying to get the color out of a faded car's painting. Like it must be in here somewhere. You're really trying to find it somewhere in there, or you're just gonna think about it as any other person of our time probably would. It's just, I'm listening to this guy talk to himself while playing video games. But if you were maybe a person from 100 years in the future, and maybe you didn't know this game and just found this video laying around, you'd be getting insight into, well, me as a person for sure, but also I'm transmitting so much more wittingly, or willingly and unwillingly, wittingly and unwittingly as well. I'm telling so much more than just what I'm saying, because all my persona, all of my ideas are influenced by the time I'm in. And if you're detached from that time, you're going to be seeing a lot more. You're going to be seeing a lot more creativity and a lot more personality in the video itself, in my commentary itself, than if you lived, and if you live indeed in the age that I'm living. Just because you're so detached. And that's the reason why we look at, well, it's not the reason, but it is part of the reason why we look at things like prehistoric art, for example, which is very important in understanding what art is. And when I say art, what art is, I don't mean what they thought in 2,000 years ago or 20,000 years ago. 2,000 wasn't prehistory, unless, anyway. But 20,000 years ago, they certainly... There's no reason for us to believe that they thought of what they were doing, painting some walls in a cave or outside even, or making sculptures out of wood and all that sort of stuff, which they made. But there's no reason to believe that they thought of it as anything close to what we think as art today. But our understanding of their work is very relevant, and that's what we're referring to when we say, what is art? And so if you go in that route, it is also pretty important to if you're going to call prehistoric art, it's also pretty important to be aware that what we're referring to is a definition and not necessarily the object of our definition. So what I meant by that is, because we're so detached from the prehistoric art, a doodle, a literal doodle that doesn't matter, or a copy of another thing, is still art for us from a very, very real perspective. And that's what I mean. Maybe you're watching this 1,000 years in the future, and somehow this video survived. This is extremely valuable. Well, maybe I don't know if it is extremely valuable or not. If 1,000 years in the future we have as much info as we have right now in the year 2020 of the year 1020, then can you imagine finding a Let's Play video? I mean, the equivalent of a Let's Play video. From maybe not 1,000 years in the past, but we do have some the equivalent of Let's Play videos of 1,000 years in the past. We have books, we have journals, and all this sort of stuff. But 10,000, that'd be amazing. That's the sort of stuff that really sheds light into societies itself. It's like, yeah. Anyway, so yeah, all this to go back to that thing. I look like a modern artist. I don't know that. I have no idea what. Yeah. Hold on. Is architecture also art? Which sounds like a. Oh my god. It's yeah, architecture is also art, but I think our conceptualization is too high of its own farts. It's masturbation with a ruler and a sextant. Architecture obviously is art. It is so art that it is probably, for many periods of history, the foreground of art. When we refer to Roman art, it is architecture. The statues are architecture. They are incorporated within all the movement of architecture. So, like, even the sculpting of statues is architecture through a certain period of history, obviously. But anyway, what about music? Is it art? Only the most experimental kind. So yeah, did I spot the elitism? No, I didn't. I think this is weird. It's not like, because this definition is not elitist or elitist, however you pronounce it. I'm sorry, I'm weird. It isn't. But then over here, there's this thing. So I think this might be more of the. Might be more of the of the stereotypes working here. Also, by the way, just to clarify, because I feel I should, this sort of stuff, it's ableist and it's gross, so I'm not, I mean, sure, it's a character, whatever, but I'm not gonna give it the time of day. I have been critical lately. Let's go with that, instead of calling everything stupid. Yes, you seek substance. No vapid representations and reproductions of social mores. I don't know that word. I don't think it's a typo. As made manifest in stuffy biennials. We're talking real living art here. Someone become the art cop. Half art critique, half cop. Nope. Nope. I cannot risk another copo diversion at this point. Kim is gonna kill me. Go away. Bravo. Continue then in the mediocre and vulgar epigons of the world. So what if everything is incomprehensibly shit and you can see it, take no responsibility? Actually, I've heard of this idea here. Apparently you get like I don't know who I heard it from though. I think it might have been Keith Ballard. I still need to watch Keith Ballard's Let's Play of this game. But I think it might have been him. He said something about somebody did, either him or Jim Sterling, I don't know, about if you want to become the art cop. Basically, you get minus perception because you can't stand looking at anybody or looking at anything because everything looks shit. And that's one of the many times where the game just hides in those little details, those fun little things. Oh, I still haven't done the thing. My God. Where, you know, this sort of stuff like is hidden and things like that, and it's super cool. And as we saw last episode, so that's an 8%. That's not too bad. That's pretty decent. 8% is great. I need to roll a 5 or a 5-6 or a 6-6. Basically, where that is, I think. Just an ordinary wall. Nothing to see here. Failure. It wasn't even that far away. I rolled a 16. Yeah, why? It's a wall. An ordinary wall. The lieutenant sighs. Why must he stop looking? I know, Kim, I'm sorry. It's fine. We're just gonna I'm gonna dress my normal things in here, and we're gonna look at the pile of clothes. Hey. Kunese, come here. Can I talk to you? No. Nope. Okay, so I don't know where the pile of rags is. I don't believe it is here. I do believe. Oh no, this is closed. Right. I do believe it is. Oh, that's where the fascist went to. I think. I do believe it is upstairs. In Kuno's dad's place, or Kuno's place, I suppose. But I'm gonna look for it, and we're not gonna waste time on camera to look for that stuff. Ooh, we got a thing over here. And we're also out of time for the day. So for right now, I'm Colonel RPG, and this is Disco Elysium. I really hope you've enjoyed it, and if you did, I'm very thankful. Thank you for enjoying it, and if you didn't, I'm very sorry, because I ramble up a lot. But don't forget to leave a like. A dislike counts the same. I count them all the same. To see the next episode come out sooner rather than later. Thank you so much for joining me. Bye-bye.